So I originally was gonna make a much longer video in response to the Bird's latest ditty of a video. But, honestly, I decided I didn't want to do all that editing because I recorded a reaction, but it ended up being like way longer than I anticipated. But for the moment, I really just wanted to respond to this one moment. So I'm going to play it and I'm going to tell you why this, in a nutshell, this exposes how intellectually bankrupt Sean is and his content is.
I mean, it's really hard to pretend that you're trying to fix racism or racial abuse when you spend an hour saying that a woman's life should be over and she should be criminally prosecuted for saying a word, while completely ignoring the guy who provoked a fight and stabbed a high schooler because he didn't want to move to a different tent. One of these is 100 times worse than the other, and giving the harshest possible criticism to the less bad thing while completely ignoring the other makes you seem like a terrible person. Oh, but I guess it's okay because it's not possible to be racist against white people, right?
This idea of equating of one side to the other side often loses track of this issue of power. To use his example, when Black people stand up and say, hey, let's build our own stuff, hey, let's have a Black power movement. When a Black person says, hey, let's preserve our culture, I have no problem with Italians or Irish people or anyone else saying, let's preserve our culture. But when we don't talk about ethnicity, but actual race, and when white people say, let's preserve whiteness, it's an exclusionary practice. It's about preserving laws and practices and tactics that do harm to other people. A Black power movement was about opening stores and building businesses. A white power movement was about something very, 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 very different. A white power movement included lynchings and included Ku Klux Klan, etc. So let's not pretend that these are opposite sides of the same coin. When white people say, let's save our country, and even using language of our country, when Black people built this thing, when you say that, you're talking about forcing people out of the country. You're talking about laws that discriminate. You're talking about doing harm to people.
Right, because affirmative action doesn't exist and the summer of 2020 never happened. Racist black people have never caused a riot before, only a mostly peaceful protest. Someone in the comments pointed out that they censored every use of the N-word on Pierce's show, but when white racial slurs were used, they weren't censored, which is true. They clearly think that one form of racism matters a lot less than the other, and when you have a two-tiered system like that, all you're going to do is increase racial hatred and increase racial prejudice. Also, the more you make every single negative interaction a race issue, the more the racial divide will increase. And like I said, I don't think that people like Piers or anyone else that has race scripted in this video is stupid. I think they're doing it on purpose. There's a lot of money to be made in race grifting.
Okay, so for those who don't know, the gentleman in the Piers Morgan video who was making a very good point about the difference between black and white power. His name's Mark Lamontil, and again, he made a really excellent point. Black power in America has been about building things, building communities, okay? But white power in America has been about literally burning things down, killing people. We're talking about segregation, lynchings, redlining. Coming off of Mark Lamont Hill's point, think before you sleep goes immediately to like just pivots to like, well, affirmative action. I mean, really, like seriously, his response to lynching, segregation, cops beating up black protesters, over policing, police brutality, and his response is, well, what about affirmative action? Isn't affirmative action gone the way of the dodo, right? It's not a thing anymore. What a brain dead cop out. It tells me either Bird is a bigot or Bird is brain dead, or maybe both. He completely just ignores, he doesn't engage with anything that Mark Lamont Hill just said. He just completely just like falls back on this very tired talking point of there was riots in the summer of 2020 and affirmative action. Are we not gonna? I mean, like he's just completely ignoring literally like hundreds of years of history. And then he just goes on to talk about like, oh well, in the comments they're just talking about how they censor people on the Piers Morgan show. Yeah, like I've been the first one to point out that Piers Morgan Uncensored is censored. So in a nutshell, it just points out how crappy his content is and how dishonest and brain dead and fraudulent and grifty. Sean claims that his content is like philosophy content, but he couldn't even engage with that point, with that salient point that Mark Lamont Hill says. He didn't even try, for crying out loud. I mean, and this is part of the reason why I make a distinction. I think there is a distinction to be made between bigotry and racism. I think black people can be bigoted, although it's often in response to white bigotry and racism. Okay? But I think bigotry is more of like prejudices and sentiments versus racism is more about action. And no, you're never going to hear Sean talk about this because he just wants to whine about like, oh, well, affirmative action. Yeah, as if Sean, I mean, Sean acts like he got denied entry into Harvard because some DEI student got in above him. Like, come on, the guy went to. I mean, actually, if memory serves correct, Sean didn't even finish college because he couldn't. He couldn't even pass. He couldn't even graduate. He couldn't even graduate. If I remember correctly, he had told Brittany that he couldn't even graduate, and he blamed his teacher or something. Oh, the teacher was bad.